Welcome to our second in a series of debates for the 6 Anchorage Assembly races. I'm Jeff Landfield, editor of the Alaska Landmine. Only 2 incumbents are seeking re-election. Assemblymembers Daniel Voland and Kameron Perez-Verdia. District 3, West Anchorage, is one of those seats where the incumbent is seeking re-election. Kameron Perez-Verdia, glad you're here. Your opponents, Jonathan Duckworth and Amy Steen, did not respond to our invitation to the debate, and neither one have filed APOC campaign finance report. So it's just you and 2 opponents who's not raising money or campaigning. Ballots for the 6 assembly races, 2 school board races, and bond propositions went out in the mail this week. They're due back by April 1st. Before we start the debate, I want to thank our sponsors, GCI, providing great internet and phone service, the Sumner Company, one of the Mat-Su Valley's premier home builders, Legislative Consultants, owned by lobbyists Wendy Chamberlain and Heather Brakes, the IBW Local 1547, and Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Before we start, Kameron, I'll give you a chance to just maybe real quick introduce yourself. You're running for your 3rd term, and then we'll kind of have a discussion about some of the issues facing Anchorage.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Hi, everybody. My name is Kameron Perez-Verdia. Just a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Alaska. I'm originally from Utqiagvik, formerly known as Barrow. I've served on the Anchorage Assembly for the last 6 years, and I'm seeking re-election. It's been a rough last 6 years. Lots of things have been challenging over that period of time, but some good things have happened too, and I'm really proud of my work, specifically in public safety, where we've brought on body cameras and we've funded police more and more each year to try to make sure that they're there to continue to increase our public safety. And also homelessness, even though it's an issue that we all are very concerned about. We've seen some growth. We've seen the 3rd Avenue Navigation Center. We've seen the Complex Center, the Sakayan up. We've increased our affordable housing units by about 400 over the last couple of years. And even in 2024, at the end, through the Next Step program, we transitioned about 150 people from camps to housing. So there's been some growth and some improvement there, but there's a lot more to go, and I can talk about that more when we're having our conversation. But you know, I was born and raised in Alaska. I've lived here my whole life. I'm raising my kids here, and I care deeply about this city and the people who live here. And that's why I'm running again, because I think we need people on the Assembly who are really willing to listen and do the work. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
First thing I want to ask you is, in 2022 you ran for your 2nd term, and Liz Vasquez was your main opponent, and there was a 3rd guy, but it wasn't really a big lot. Some money was raised, and you won re-election pretty easily. This year, in 2022 and 2023, there was big assembly races. Lots of money were being raised. There was Mayor Bronson. There was kind of contentious relationship with the assembly, and then this time, only I think 9 of the 16 candidates running for the seats filed APOC reports, and a few others raised very little money. You've raised I think the most money, but your opponents haven't raised any money or campaigned much. Why do you think things are not as hyped up or energetic as they were in 2022 and 2023? Have voters become apathetic, or is it now the Assembly and the mayor are more aligned, so maybe there's not as much excitement?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a good answer for it. I mean, I know that this last election cycle was a challenging one. People were pretty exhausted after that, and so a lot of us, actually didn't even start our campaigns until January, because of the November campaign and how sort of exhausted
presidential,
folks were. Exactly. But I would say that but once I started making phone calls and knocking on doors, people seem pretty excited about what's going on now. They seem excited about the fact that the Assembly and the mayor are finally going to start to work together, and they seem more hopeful now about where we're going. I don't know why we have some folks who run for office but are not raising money and not getting out there. It's a mystery to me, but it's important to me that I still do that. I still raise money, knock on doors, make phone calls, and really make sure that I'm out there listening to the folks. I
just came back a couple days ago I go to Juneau for the session, and it just seems like I haven't seen many signs, whereas in years past it's a lot more, you get mailers, you see signs up, you see more energy. It just seems like it's a little bit more subdued this time.
I would agree. Yeah, I mean, I think it's true not only in my race, but in Midtown and East and a variety of races where we're not seeing the same kind of competition. We're not seeing the same kind of energy.
So you first won in 19, right? And you're running for your 3rd term.
Yep, that's right.
You were there with Berkowitz and then Bronson and now LaFrance. we talked about a little earlier the contentious relationship with the Assembly and especially at the beginning. Probably got maybe a little better as it went towards the end. But what's it like now with a new mayor who you served on the Assembly with, Suzanne LaFrance? She was chair for a couple of years. What's that like now compared to the previous 3 years with Bronson?
Better. It's much better. I don't think it's a mystery, but I struggled to work with Bronson. I felt like I worked very hard at it, and it was a very difficult relationship. But now I think having Mayor LaFrance in the seat, she's somebody who I've worked with on the Assembly. I think very highly of her. And a lot of the priorities that she has, public safety and housing and homelessness and economic development, her priorities are really in line with mine. And so I'm excited about the things that we're going to get done. So
you mentioned in your opening homelessness, and this is something I've spent a lot of time studying and kind of making. We've made 3 videos in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of folks looking at kind of what's happening in the parks and the trails, and there's other things happening that I think some of the things you talked about, the housing, but for a lot of people it seems like it's not getting better, and in some cases we're getting worse.
Yeah.
And there was this, former Martin v. Boise, this Ninth Circuit deal, which kind of constrained the city's ability to move people if there wasn't enough shelter, and that was difficult for police to know maybe what was available. It was overturned last summer, so that's not really there anymore, that constraint.
Yeah.
What do you think we should be doing, in addition to the housing and offering people help, but the folks who don't want to leave, who just want to be outside, and many of them tell me that they kind of like being outside.
Yeah, it's one of those issues that's really hard to do sound bites for because it's so complex and there's so many parts to it. So I'd said before that I do think that there's been some progress. There are folks who are who, for instance, in the snow dump, the area out in
Davis Park.
The Davis Park. I talked with some people a few weeks ago that had been there for more than 2 years. And so there are people who have lived outside and lived in those camps for a long time, and those are really challenging folks to figure out what their next steps are. But what we do know is that if we get people who communicate with them and get out there and build relationships with them, if there are shelter options, if there are options for treatment, then through those relationships, eventually many of them do go to some form of supported housing, rapid rehousing, transitional housing, or treatment, but it takes time. And in some cases, abatement's necessary because it's a health hazard or because it's too close to a school. And in some cases, leaving folks where they are and building those relationships and getting them transitioned right is the right way to go.
A few weeks ago, I was in Anchorage, and people reach out to me. We've been covering this for so long. I get emails and messages on Facebook and tips about things. And there was a camp over on Diamond and Victor, and it was right off the Diamond.
Yep, I'm familiar with it.
I've seen a lot of camps, but this one was almost even a little worse in the sense of trash, just mounds and mounds, right near the creek.
Yeah.
And, you see more and more, since I've been doing this in 2019, you're seeing more permanent structures, chimney pipes, fire pits or stoves almost, and generators and permanent structures. So, I mean, at least from my perspective, I think this Martin v. Boise thing for a long time, we kind of just took a hands-off approach to it where we said, well, we want you to leave, but if we really can't make you leave. And now it's become almost maybe people think they can just kind of do that. So
yeah, I think you're going to see some change over the next year. I think you're going to see change because we're working on building a better shelter system. So right now there's an RFP that went out to identify 4 new smaller shelter sites throughout the city. I think you're going to see a change because now the Assembly and the Mayor are working together and working with all the aid agencies that are out there. I think one of the big challenges that we faced over the last few years is honestly the inability for the Assembly and the administration to work together.
Did you like the Navigation Center, the one Bronson was pitching? Did you?
Well, so the 3rd Avenue Navigation Center that is down in town. But let me just say that I think that one of the things that's real challenging is that we conflate often homelessness and crime, and it's natural because it often happens in the same time. But what we need to do is be abating when we need to abate, and we need to be better at holding people accountable for criminal activity. And I think that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing when I talk to people about their concern about homelessness, I'm concerned. They're concerned about criminal activity. They're concerned about trash. They're concerned about behavior that is illegal.
A lot of these camps, it's very common. Almost every one of them, you see a lot of bike
parts,
frames, tires, and propane tanks, tools, and
Yeah, and getting more people out there through outreach and through our community service officer program, I think is going to be the key to that.
So kind of switching to housing. Yesterday we had Daniel Voll and Daniel George, and we talked about this quite a bit. But
Yep.
the average price of a house in Anchorage is over $500,000. The rents are, I think, about $1,400 on average, and we're just not. There's been talk about this. LaFrance has 10,000 homes in, I think, 10 years,
Yep,
whatever it is.
10,000 homes in 10 years.
There's zoning, and there was a move by, I think it was Meg Zolotel, Daniel Voland, and Kevin Cross to redo or streamline the zoning process, and that kind of blew up. And the NIMBY people kind of oftentimes freak out. I think Kevin Cross resigned. I don't know if it was over that, but I think it was partially to that. But there's been talk of the zoning and the permitting, and the Valley. They're building a lot of homes, and the average price of a home is less.
Yep.
The rents are less. Why do you think we've been kind of stuck on this zoning, permitting, housing problem for so long?
Well, so a few things. One is that our planning department is a department that continues to struggle, I think, to get through the permitting process in an efficient time. And that's something we've been talking a lot about how we can improve the efficiency of folks who need to get permits, get permits. So lowering the barriers to development and creating more incentives. That's been a goal, I think, of the whole assembly, is trying to do that. The debate between changing zoning laws and those folks who are concerned about their neighborhoods changing, that's a natural push and pull that we have. And I think it's really important because I think that they both have a point, right? We need to move quickly. We need to develop housing. We need to lower barriers. We need to create incentives. We need to make it be able to pencil out for the developers in this city to actually build.
It just seems like a lot of things I hear from builders, after a threeplex, when it comes to a fourplex or more,
Right.
it just becomes really hard.
It doesn't pencil out.
Whereas
the
a
cost
single
of it.
family or duplex,
That's right.
triplex are easier.
That's right.
After triplex, it just and frankly, I mean that's how you're going to get housing. You're going to do more dense housing.
We
It's
have to
cheaper.
get more dense housing.
It's more.
Yeah.
Economies of scale.
That's the goal. The goal is to get more housing, denser housing, lower barriers, and that's the work that through both the home program that the assembly developed and the 10,000 homes in 10 years that the mayor's doing. That's the goal is to make it easier for us to build and develop.
I've been saying this for a long time, for as long as I can, maybe since I've been doing landmine or involved in politics. Anchorage, especially after COVID, could be kind of the jewel attraction for tech workers.
Yeah.
IT workers. A lot of people want to go outside. They want to camp. They want to fish. They want to kayak. I mean, we literally can drive 30 minutes parking in the parking lot, and we can have, after an hour hike, have views that some people dreamed of their whole life to see.
Yeah, and I think we need a vision. We need a vision of this city. I mean, it's been a rough last few years, right? I mean, through COVID, economic downturn, lots of challenges.
5 years ago, the lockdown started.
Right,
5
right.
years ago.
And so, I mean, partly what I think we're seeing both the short-term actions through changing zoning law, Title 21, those kinds of things. But the other part we need to think about is to your point, what's the vision for the future of Anchorage? What kind of a place do we want to have? And I think, honestly, not to be overly ambitious, but right now is the time when we've got a mayor and we've got assembly who are willing to work together. We've got business partners who are willing to step in and really start to develop. So that's why I'm running for re-election, because I think now is a really unique time for us to actually get some things done, where the last few years have been gridlock.
So this has been a really low snowfall winter, which I think I'm the president of my HOA, which I'm very excited we haven't spent.
Are you in Bayshore? Are you down in
No, I'm on Old Seward in Dowling, River Park.
Okay.
But we have 116 units, and in the last 2 years, we've had to spend a lot of extra money on snow. Our snow storage filled up.
Yeah.
We had to pay to get snow off the roofs
Yeah.
because there was leaking and ice damming. But so part of the thing is snow plowing. All these things are better for everybody, but it's very dry, and if it's going to be another dry summer like 2019, a lot of people are concerned about the fire
hazard. Yeah.
And we saw in 2019 the fire over there in Elmore, and luckily I had John Glover on my podcast, the Wildland Fire Chief, and luckily that was surrounded by roads,
Yeah.
and the winds weren't very, very strong. But some of these, going back to homeless camps and all these dead spruce trees all over town, how worried about you are if it's a low snow year and if it's a hot summer? Yeah,
well, I mean, I serve as chair of the Public Health and Safety Committee, and we've had this conversation a number of times just in the last couple of months. And Chief Schrage is very concerned about it because it's a low snow year overall, and and with the number of homeless camps and all the things you're talking about.
We've seen several fires over there at the Davis Park. This last few months, there's been a couple fires.
There is actually a new task force that is being formed by a cross section of people from the mayor's office and code enforcement and then the police department and the fire department, thinking specifically about this, about how to be really innovative this year to ensure that we're looking at that.
And there's several challenges. One of them is, there's muni property, which we can, I guess, deal with, but there's state property, and there's federal property, and then there's private property.
For sure.
And some people, and I don't necessarily blame them, they don't want to cut the trees down because it's their they don't want, they want privacy. But we can't force people to do. And actually, John Glover told me they will come out for free and they'll do an assessment. If you call the wildland office. But it just seems like it almost could be the perfect storm where you got the state and they don't have a lot of money. We're seeing that happening.
We got to get the word out. We got to let people know that this is a really dangerous year when it comes to fires, and people need to be more careful than ever. And there's a whole bunch of there's a list of guidelines that's on the fire department's website about what people could do in their own homes to protect their homes and ensure that the brush is clear. And
it's like your health or your teeth. A little bit of prevention. Right. If you don't do, if it actually
very real.
Goes to the worst case, the costs are probably hundreds of times higher.
And it's true on the west side of town where I live and work, and also south side, and a lot of those communities are very concerned about it because they had access as well. So
you mentioned the west side. Maybe talk a little bit about the airport. I know there's been this this Northlink stuff, and there's been some over the years some talk of expanding. They're doing some other additions of business stuff at the airport. It's in your district. The airport's one of our kind of main drivers in our economy here in Anchorage. And we're seeing the commercial traffic pick up too as well.
Well, I hope so, because it's an important.
I think part of the Russia sanctions, the planes can't fly over Russia, so they have to come here more to get fuel.
Well, it's I think that I understand our former mayor is now the director of the airport.
He is, Bronson is now the airport. Dunley, the governor appointed him to be airport director.
That's right. So I haven't met with him yet as the airport director, but I look forward to doing that. But the airport's an important resource for our city and for our state, and going out to the community council meetings and hearing the airport do updates. They're doing a lot of exciting things, new construction and new projects and a variety of things.
So this last year there was talk of a sales tax, a 3% sales tax. The Anchorage Economic Development Corporation came out kind of talking about that. There was some proposals, and now it's been put on hold, or it's on hold till after the election, I guess.
Well, so it's not on hold. There's a proposal that is currently before us that we're going to vote on very, very soon.
As far as there's not a vote on this ballot on this.
No, not on this ballot, but there is a proposed special election that would come in September that we would do. So if it passes through the assembly, then it would be on a special election in September.
So where are you on the sales tax and I guess kind of in the guise of the property tax? We have very high property taxes, are much higher than the national average. There's been talk about offsetting some of the property tax with the sales tax. We also have a lot of tourists come in every summer. We have people from the valley come in every day. Where are you on the sales tax?
Well, so the current proposal is 2% to relieve property tax and 1% for these municipal area projects. And I'm when this first came out, I was excited about it. I went to Oklahoma City and I saw what they were doing there and learned more about the projects they were doing. So I was excited when it first came because I feel like a lot of people, we need to think about alternative revenue sources, and we need to think about the impact of that these high property taxes are having on property owners. So through the process, it's been a struggle to be able to figure out exactly whether this is the right proposal or not. We've heard things like the amount of property taxes going to large corporations who own property here in the city. We've heard concerns about the natural impact that it has on low-income communities. And so what I'm doing is that I'm concerned about it. I have not taken a stand on it yet because I'm really hoping that we can make a few more changes.
It just seems kind of.
But let me just say that I'm doubting whether it's going to get through the assembly. I don't think it has the
And
votes.
if it does, it's 60% of the voters, right, to adopt it.
Right.
It just seems odd to me that the Valley has it, sales tax, Juneau has it.
I think we eventually need to have a sales tax.
All the southeast communities have it. Fairbanks, everybody has it except, and we're the biggest city.
I think that and I'm not sure whether this is the right or wrong, but it became very complicated, right? There were so many restrictions. There were so many different pieces and parts to it. I think people, and I just came from knocking on doors just today, people are still confused. They're confused about what it pays for, where it comes from, how it works. And so I think that's a challenge right now is that something simple and clean and easy
I think you're right.
would be the way to go.
When this comes up, and it doesn't come up as seriously in the last couple of years in Juneau, but it's been talked about.
Yeah.
And what happens is the lobbyists get involved and the different people get involved and they want to get exemptions. So then you have to keep raising it.
Yeah,
so it's got to be low and no exemptions.
It's
got to be very low and no exemptions.
But I will just say that the reason I was excited is because I think, like a lot of people, we need to think of other revenue sources. We need to think of ways to make sure that tourists are paying their fair share. We need to think about the folks that are coming in from the valley. We need to be able to collect some taxes in that way.
We get a lot of tourists coming up here in the summertime.
But I'm not feeling hopeful, and I was a fan of it at first. I thought at first it seemed very simple, seemed very clear. 2% reduction of property taxes, 1% for these cool projects that would maybe be an economic boom for us for 7 years, and everybody would be really excited about it. But boy, it's become really complicated and messy.
So speaking of revenue, I was going to ask you, the state, obviously there's talk of this education bill which passed the House and still has to go to the Senate, and the governor, there's all kinds of complications there. But between the state and the oil price going down, the forecast going down, I don't think it's any secret we're not going to be getting a lot of federal money. I mean, what position is the city in kind of right now with not a lot of help from the state, maybe some education increase, but also the federal kind of reductions?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm going to say I hope that the education bill gets through and then the governor signs it. We need it. We need to increase funding for our schools. It is not even a joke at this point. I served on the school board years ago, and it was a desperate need then, and it's a desperate need now. But yeah, when on my day job, I run a nonprofit organization that is heavily federally funded.
Humanities Forum. Right?
Yeah, the city receives a significant amount of money from the federal government. I think all of us are concerned and are watching about what's going to happen with all these executive orders and the concerns around federal funding. But if FEMA funding, if Medicaid, Medicare, I mean, all of these programs are incredibly important to our state. So.
Yeah, the education, I think it's interesting. I mean, I agree that the BSA hasn't increased since 2017. And I think it's fair to look at the outcomes, and a lot of the governor has and the Republicans have ideas about homeschooling and charter schooling and outcomes, and I agree with all of those. But I also just think it's wild. I mean, like, I'm on my condo board. I told you, we look at our insurance increases, our utility increases. Everything's going up. I mean, you just can't deny it. So,
it is.
Everything's increasing, especially since COVID, since 2020.
My mother and father worked in education in Alaska for years. It's something that I'm deeply committed to, and you have to get a well-paid, well-trained teacher in a school with a reasonable amount of kids in that classroom, and you need to fund that. You need to fund schools, and the impact will be incredible. It'll be incredible for our kids, for our families, for our city, and so it is the best investment that we can make. It just completely frustrates me every year that we're not funding our schools to the degree that we should, and we're coming up with an excuse year after year as to why. It is a travesty that we're not increasing the BSA.
What do you think about just there's been some proposals to close some schools. I think it was 6 schools, and then whenever you do that, obviously the communities get really upset about it.
Yeah.
But there is less students. There's less students in the 70s right now than there is, even in the last couple of years. There's been between homeschooling and moving.
Yeah. I mean, I think we need to use the resources that we have wisely, and I think that conversation about closing schools was happening when I was on the school board. So I think that eventually that probably needs to happen because the population has shrunk, and so we need to use the resources we have better. So I know it's hard. I know it's hard for a community to lose their school, but those are hard choices that the school board needs to make. And but I would agree is once a school has a certain level of capacity, we seriously need to think about closing it.
I want to ask you about the kind of police shootings. There's been several this year and last year, and a lot of times it was people were shooting at the police or wouldn't drop weapons. But there's been increased calls by a lot of folks to have more civilian oversight. But then there's also people saying, look, the cops need to be able to do their job without every time something happens, have be second guessed or have some kind of tribunal. There's also recruitment challenges with the amount of police we have. We have less police than other cities our size. I guess where are you at in the civilian oversight model, and then also police being able to do their jobs?
I'm really glad you asked me about that because this is something actually that I've been working quite a bit on. First of all, it's really important that we understand that we do have one of the best police departments in the country. And I just went on a ride-along 2 weeks ago, and incredible, professional, compassionate people who work for our police department that we should all be very, very proud of. We also need a police department that listens to and engages with the public on a regular basis, and that we have a police department that has a system where the community can share their concerns, and those concerns can be really heard, and that is accountable to the people of Anchorage. And so that's what has been going on, is that we've had a disproportionate number of officer-involved shootings, and the concern of the community, valid as it is what's going on? What's going on with training? What's going on with policies? Why is this going on? And so some number of things that have happened, but I've been sort of in the middle of making sure that we're reviewing our policies, reviewing our training, getting independent reviews of those, so we're learning how we can get better. At the same time, setting up better ways for the community to communicate with the police department and vice versa. So we're bringing back the Public Safety Commission, which is going to be a way for the public to have a better opportunity to be able to make sure that they know what's going on with the police department, and there's better communication back and forth. I think there just has not been a lot of work in that area over the last few years under the Bronson administration. It was a very difficult time for us to actually get some things done. Now I think that we can put some things back in place that will improve. And by the way, Chief Case is the police chief for us right now. He's compassionate, he's professional. He is the guy that is going to help us to not only build a better relationship with the community, but actually continue to improve our police department.
There's been some talk the last several years in Juneau and even now on pensions, and one of the things you hear from especially police and fire, and even Commissioner Cockrell, the DPS commissioner, has said we'll get people to be law enforcement in Alaska, and in 5 years they leave.
We're losing them, yeah.
And they go to Montana, or they go to Wyoming, or they go to other states where there's better.
We need defined benefits. We need defined benefits. Defined benefits. Thank you. Yeah, we need better benefits. That's what's happening. Is that they come, they get the best training in the world, and then they find somewhere else to move where they get better benefits. And we need to improve our benefits for our police officers so that we can not only recruit more, but we can hold on to them.
I mentioned it before a little bit on the low snow year, but the last 2 years we saw kind of record snowfall, and we saw storms where 2 or 3 storms in the course of a week, and just snow plowing was a disaster, and schools were, remote learning, I guess, but basically closed, and people weren't able to go to work, and commerce was affected. This year it's been low snow, so we haven't really dealt with that, but I know there's been talk of new equipment and wages. The airport had to, I think, raise wages 30% a couple of years. When we had the high snowfall, the airport can't close like the city. Yeah. Are we ready for next year if it's another big snowfall?
I think we are. We've been putting a lot of work into this. The mayor has made it a top priority, and the assembly has allocated a significant amount of funds to make sure we've got the right equipment. And it was interesting because when the snowfall first hit, I think it went pretty well. I mean, compared to past years, we were able to actually get out there and work 24/7 and to be able to get it cleared. And because of the low snowfall, we haven't been able to necessarily show what we can do. But yeah, I think that the city is in a better place now in terms of our preparedness for snow. And hopefully we won't need it to the degree we had last year because it was a record year. But I think there's been a higher commitment to make sure that that's a priority for us. Yeah.
There's also the challenge with the state, the state roads, and I think the public always gets confused. C
State
Street
roads
or
and
Diamond or Seward versus the city roads, and
yeah.
I think last year Mayor Bronson kind of directed the city straight graders to do the state roads, and then we had these roads where for a week the side roads weren't plowed.
It was terrible. I mean, we didn't have anybody on my street during the Bronson administration for weeks and weeks. I had elderly people, neighbors who I was out there shoveling their driveway just so that they can get out to check their mail. So it's better. It really is a bit better.
You've been on the Assembly since 19, but you've been around for a long time. You were on the school board.
Yeah.
I moved here in 04, and it just seemed to me like this problem kind of started in 2015, 16, when the price of oil went down, and just the money the state was spending. Everything. We're in this place where for a long time we haven't.
Yeah.
But we've cut down to the bone.
Yeah.
Beyond that we're not spending money, and you just can't fix it overnight. I mean, some of these pieces of equipment take 18 months to buy.
Well, and
you can't just go to the store and the parking lot and buy it.
During the Berkowitz administration, Jason Bockenstedt, who used to work for him, he did this really great sort of historical analysis of funding from the state and how it's changed over the last two decades, especially the last decade. And we used to get millions of dollars from the state to be able to maintain our roads and infrastructure and capital programs and all of these things, and it's all gone. And so we're in a totally different place as a city. We're on our own. We've got.
Why do you think we haven't? You're talking about the sales tax now. Why
Yeah.
haven't we? 5-10 years ago, we didn't do the sales tax. Hey, we're losing money from this. We need to take care of ourselves.
It's always been on the minds of folks, but I think there's a sense that it won't pass. I think this is one of the reasons why this proposal was built in the way it was, with the 2% reduction of property taxes, because it was a way to get folks to go, hey, here's something we really need, and relieve the pressure of property taxes, which a lot of folks feel. So it was a way to try to maybe get something through. It still might make it. I mean, I'm not 100% killing it at this point. I think that if we can get something out there and people will vote for it, it might go through. So I'm going to wait until I get more information before I finalize my vote. But I think we need a sales tax. This may not be the right one, but if this one doesn't go through, then I'll be the first one to say let's try again.
Well, I just got my little card in the mail a few weeks ago, and my condo went up 40,000. I mean, a lot.
Yeah.
It really.
Yeah.
Speaking of property tax, the assessments are going up.
Yep. Mine as well.
The property tax bills are going up.
Yep.
Last thing I want to ask you about the Cook Inlet gas situation. Last year we saw the big cold snap, and the energy grid almost failed due to the wells not being able to. The storage wells not being able to draw enough gas. Now they're talking about importing LNG.
Yep.
We see the NSTAR and Chugach bills already on the rise. Importing LNG, they're going to go up even more. There's kind of talk of the gas line, which I hope happens. I'm always skeptical because we've been hearing about it for decades.
Yeah.
But is this something the city has any role in, or is it more the state and the utilities and maybe the federal government with assisting with the gas line? Do we have any role to?
I mean, we're all in it together, right? So we all have a role to some degree. I think initially it's a state, conversation to have. But I will say that I would agree with you. I think that we need to be thinking about the future of Alaska, and I think that thinking about how to use our natural gas in a more effective way is the way to go. But yeah, no, initially it's a state issue. But as a city, we need to watch it closely, and if there's something we can do as a city to support it, I think that we should.
It's really too bad we didn't build Susitna-Wantana a decade ago, because that would have taken so much pressure off the gas for, gas could have been used for the heat instead of for the because most of the electrical is actually natural gas fueled.
Yeah.
Whereas if we had the dam, that's I think 400 megawatts. I mean, that's a huge amount of power. We could have. It just seems to me, for so long we don't build anything. We're talking about the sales tax and you building things, and statewide there's roads or infrastructure or projects. There's just not a lot being.
Yeah, I want to make sure I'm saying this before I end, because I think, as I say, I think we need a vision for the future of Anchorage, and that vision is we need to invest in Anchorage, and that means we may have to pay a little bit more for right now, but we need to build. And we need to make sure we're thinking about how to invest in our city. It's rough right now. It's rough to walk around downtown and to see the impact that COVID and the economic downturn had. But I think there's some people out there. I know there's some people out there that are planning on building and planning on developing.
Well, we have Mark Begich. He's doing the hotel, which I think
Beautiful.
Finally we saw something happen at Wild Birch, and he's taken the Aviator, and I've done a few tours in there.
So have I. It's
there's
beautiful.
The bar and the restaurant and the deck.
There's a number of exciting projects coming. City Hall, the lease is coming soon, and that whole corridor in there, I think, there's some opportunity for us to do some really innovative things. Yeah.
Wait, the City Hall leases? We don't own the building?
We don't own the building.
Who owns the building?
Mark Pfeffer.
Oh, Mr. Pfeffer. He's I call that guy the king of sole source.
Yeah, and Mark are talking these days, so you might see something cool.
That was the LIO building, right? The whole deal there downtown. So what happens if we don't renew? I don't even realize that. What happens if we don't renew the lease?
Well, I mean, we're going out. We're looking right now to see what else is going on. But I think one option is for us to buy it. One option is for us to extend the lease. But I think that project, among a number of other projects in that corridor, I think there's some real opportunity there.
I didn't realize he owns a lot of stuff, Mark Pfeffer. He's got a lot of build. So would there be any possibility of moving or building something else, or would it be probably just to stay there?
I doubt that we would move. We'll see. But I think that right now, I think it's a matter of do we buy it? Do we extend the lease? And also, how does that project connect with the transit center? How does that project connect with a lot of projects that are happening down there, including all the ones on the east side of downtown with Mark Begich. So So that's why I'm excited, because I think there's a lot of sort of energy about developing some new projects downtown.
You probably know me. I'm a big fan of the Kinnicon Bridge. I think
Yeah.
we should get that baby put in. That would be. Yes or no on the
I'm
bridge?
not a fan of the bridge.
What about a tunnel? Kinnicon, they've talked about a tunnel now.
Not a fan of a tunnel. I think there's some other things that we can.
What about a
prioritize
ferry?
first.
There was talk.
Yeah.
Remember a ferry
Yeah,
years ago?
yeah.
The catamaran where the.
I
go
like
back
the
and
bold
forth?
ideas. I like the big, bold ideas. I think that we need more of those. I really do. And I think that we need to be more positive about what's possible, which is the whole sort of like MAPS program, right? The municipal area projects, is that people would say, well, why would you go build a new chalet or a children's museum when you're dealing with all these issues like homelessness and poverty and all these challenges? That's true. We need to address those issues and make sure that our most vulnerable people are taken care of. But we also need to invest in our city and do some economically exciting things to both get people to come here, but to get us more invested in our city and revitalize downtown.
You can save a lot of money by not doing anything, and then it all catches up.
Right. So we can do both. We can take care of the people who are most vulnerable and making sure that we're addressing the issues of our city, and we can invest in really cool things and get really excited about it and feel excited about Anchorage again. I think we can do both.
Well, Kameron, it's great having you back. Again, your opponents, Amy Steen and Jonathan Duckworth, have not campaigned or raised any money. Maybe they have campaigned, but they haven't raised any money. So ballots went out Tuesday. The election concludes on April 1st. I want to thank you for coming on to the show. Kameron Perez-Verdia, Assembly member from
Thanks very
West
much, everybody.
Anchorage,
Good to
running
see
for
you.
your third term, your last term, right?
Last term, I'm going to go out and start doing some more door knocking right now. So thanks for the time.
Well, folks, thanks for tuning in to our second debate, we'll call it, with Kameron Perez-Verdia for West Anchorage. I want to thank our sponsors, GCI, the Sumner Company, legislative consultants owned by lobbyist Heather Brakes and Wendy Chamberlain, the IBW Local 1547, and Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're going to be doing four more of these, 2 more today, and then 2 more tomorrow for the 6 Anchorage Assembly races that are going to be on the ballot. They're on the ballot for the ballots that went out on Tuesday. Stay tuned. Again, I want to thank Kameron Perez-Verdia from the Anchorage
Jeff.
Assembly for coming on to the show.
Yep.
Thanks, Kameron.
Good
Appreciate
seeing
it.
you.
Thank you.
Yep.